We are hitting the root causes of initiative fatigue and burnout. We are here for our 3-day challenge from overwhelm to owning it, how to transform your initiative rollout plan so it's not just another thing on teachers' plates. I'm so happy to be here in the space with you all today because what we're going to talk about over the next 3 days is very, very important. It's something that I've noticed in my capacity as an instructional leader when I was working in the school district. It's also something that I'm noticing as a professional who does consulting and coaching. And what I'm finding out is that there are all these new initiatives. Hey y'all, how you doing? It's all these new initiatives that people have that they want leaders to be involved in, right? There's a new instructional strategy, there's a new program, there's a new curriculum, there's a new textbook, there's a new, everything new. But when we put these things out and we give them to teachers and we give them to staff members to implement, what I'm finding out is that we're missing some vital key components of what should be in those rollout plans so that it's successful. First of all, how do we know it's not successful? Because when you walk around and you observe in the teachers' classrooms, you don't see the implementation that you want to see happening in instruction. And that's the sad part. And that's where we tend to get very frustrated as instructional leaders. And I'm talking from experience. When I worked in instructional leadership, I had the job of rolling out a whole new, we got a grant program with Verizon. We had all new iPads, and I had to go and instruct and help teachers to create meaningful instruction with this technology and with the regular way they do school, right? So you're looking at how are you going to get teachers to buy in to what you're putting down? The question needs to be, why is this initiative important and what problem is it solving? So, what I'm going to talk about today is one thing that's important that we have happen a lot is something, I don't know if it's a real word, y'all. Y'all know I can make up words at the drop of a dime, but it's a phrase that comes to mind and it's called initiative burnout and fatigue. Now, I know we know about fatigue or burnout, whether it's in education or any other space, right? We've heard of these phrases before. But when we're talking about initiative burnout and fatigue, we're talking about teachers and instructional staff getting these directions from leadership. Leadership could be in the district, leadership could be in the school. No matter where the leadership is, they're getting these instructions from the leadership staff to implement this type of program, to implement this type of instructional practice. And so, teachers, I know for me, I've taught more than 10 years, probably now we're looking at 15 years in education, more than 10 of those were in the classroom. And I got sick and tired of a new program coming out every few years. Teachers are catching on to the trend. There's a new initiative, there's a new body of research, there's a new curriculum, there's a new program that's supposed to come out and solve all the problems that we have in our schools in America, right? That's how it sounds. It's like this initiative is going to solve all the problems. Just put the kids on this, or just teach it this way, or just have it this way, and you will see that problem solved. But teachers are noticing, and we got to be real about this. They are noticing that with these new initiatives that come out, they don't get implemented and rolled out in a way that is sustainable. So, what happens after about 2 or 3, maybe even 4 years, is out the door. The thing that the district spent, I've been in one district where they spent millions. I'm talking millions. I'm not exaggerating that number. Millions of dollars on a program that was supposed to increase literacy, and kids weren't even into the program, let alone the teachers that I was coaching. And that's the part that we miss. If teachers are not bought in, if they don't see the relevance of this initiative, if they don't see that their experiences that are valuable to how long they've been in education, what they've done while they've been in education, and even outside of education, right? Because the culmination of our skill sets make us who we are. It's not just I only bring my experience from work into the classroom. I bring my life experiences into the classroom. And that is what makes me a phenomenal teacher or a phenomenal coach or a phenomenal principal or academic dean. But if we're not tapping into those experiences, then we miss the mark. So now we've got teachers. I can remember I was coaching two teachers. It was a fifth grade classroom, and one of them was math, the other one was literacy and reading. So it was math and science, literacy and reading. And they had this new program that they were spending, not them, but the district was spending millions of dollars on. And they didn't believe, number one, in the power of the work. They didn't even know the process, the success path, where you start and what indicators show us that this is working or not. They just got instructions to put the kids on the program, do the work, and that is that on that. So what happened with the teachers? It became something that they became disconnected from, right? It wasted time. It wasted valuable financial resources, right? There was no support. There were no PLCs around this new initiative. It simply was something for the kids to do while the teachers would sit there and watch and make sure that they were being compliant. Simple as that. And so what we have, I'm reading this book called The Garden Within by Dr. Anita Phillips. She's a trauma therapist, she's a minister, she's a life coach. And what she talks about in this book is one idea of what happens to the soul when we're trying to achieve our goals. And I love her framework for it because it talks about taking our mindset of achieving goals more so to how can we not just conquer these goals, but how can we cultivate space for these goals to grow? And so when I have the masterclass, and for those who have not signed up yet, make sure that you click the link in my bio, because in that masterclass, we're going to talk and use the metaphor and the analogy of the garden within to think about how we are actually planning for these instructional initiatives to be rolled out. But it starts with how we plan it. And so I think a lot of times what happens in schools is that we're so quick to say we've done something, right? Check off a list. We put this instruction into play. We put the kids into this program. Teachers attended this PD. So we're just continuously checking these boxes. And y'all, let me tell you, when you're checking boxes, you're walking in the line of compliance. And we talk about liberatory education. We talk about we want our kids to be free. We talk about we want our teachers to feel empowered. That's not going to happen when you have a compliance driven initiative, right? And so what happens in the emotions, remember this lady is a trauma therapist. What happens in the emotions is that when you have tried at a goal and you become frustrated, it's called goal frustration. When you become frustrated, hey Jazz, when you become frustrated with a goal not being done, not considering what you could have done better to make the goal work, but just the simple fact that you don't see the goal being executed or reached, or there's even progress along the goal, now you have high anger. And when you have high anger plus low hope, she says it means to you, this is not worth it. Who is the you? It could be you as an instructional leader. But more so for our conversation, it's teachers. This is not worth it. I'm angry and upset because there is no support. I don't have anybody coming in, observing, coaching me, letting me know if I'm even doing this right. And we know for teachers, I know as a teacher, for me, perfectionism was something that was heavy in my grasp for a long time until I had to really learn to unpack what perfectionism was rooted in and how detrimental it was to the preservation of my soul in this journey as an educator, right? But until then, I was holding on to perfectionism. And I'm telling you, a lot of teachers are holding on to perfectionism. They want to know, and there's nothing wrong with knowing if I'm doing my job well. But there is this gap between our mindset and our identity as an educator, right? Who understands that being an educator is all about taking risk. And for those who know me, you know you're going to get some brain talk today, right? And so, in order for the brain to feel safe in taking intellectual risk, what has to happen is there has to be some sort of safety, right? Some sort of support there that lets them know, okay, I see how you did this part of the instruction and it was beneficial. However, when we got to the next part of the instruction, where it was time for you to scaffold students, you missed an opportunity to provide this sort of language STEM starter that can help your students be prompted to what they need to be thinking about in order to carry out the skill. See, when I'm talking about education, when I'm talking about culturally responsive teaching and culturally responsive leadership, we're talking about building the capacity in two areas. Two areas. Those two areas are their competence, meaning the skill set required to carry out their task, their job, the learning activity, the new instructional initiative, like we're talking about today. Competence has to be grown, it has to be cultivated. But alongside of their competence, it has to be their confidence. And so when we bring that formula into thinking about how am I being a culturally responsive school leader that is being responsible for building the competence and the confidence of the teachers that I'm leading, right? Whether you're a teacher leader, whether you are a department leader, whether you're an instructional coach, whether you work on the strategic plan, you got to think about right competence and confidence. Because if you don't work from that lens, you'll just be checking off boxes and having conversations and not attending to the soul. And so when we talk about today, which is all about understanding the root causes of initiative and fatigue burnout, what we're looking at is a type of resistance, right? And that resistance may look different. If you've been on here with me or you remember some content I posted a couple of months ago, I talked about different types of resistance. And resistance is simply the idea that I'm not fully bought in, I'm not motivated, I don't see the purpose, I don't understand the why, I don't have a lot of hope in this thing that you're telling me to do. So what's going to happen? I'm not going to do it. It may not be as bold as them saying I'm not going to do it, but what it will look like is maybe them nodding their heads in staff meetings, agreeing to do it. And then when you come around to do observations, they're doing the same thing, business as usual. But business as usual hasn't been seeing our students reach their maximum potential. It hasn't been seeing our teachers actually be happy about coming into work. Because why would teachers be happy about coming into their job? I want us to think about that. Why should teachers be happy about coming to your school? What do they see that they are doing in their profession that makes them feel good about being a teacher? I've heard a lot of complaints because I give space. When I'm coaching, we can't do that leave your emotions at the door type stuff, right? So I have to create space when I'm working with schools and districts and I'm coaching groups or coaching one-on-one. And I just did this yesterday, coaching a 8th grade social studies teacher. And I had to create the space to get it out, have conversation. And what I'm finding is that teachers love teaching, but rarely do they get the opportunity to actually see themselves, number one, teaching, because they're dealing with so many other culture issues that sometimes they can't even get to the teaching. Sometimes their instruction is not really crafted well so that they have intrigued and engaged students from the beginning so they can carry them through the learning journey. So now you got kids distracted. You got them cutting up. They on the cell phones. They doing TikToks. They got their hair out. Their edge control out, doing their hair in class. They're doing makeup. It's all the things that are happening inside of class other than teaching and learning. And so for teachers, that becomes frustrating, especially when you don't see support from your leadership team helping you to mitigate the stress that these problems are bringing. And see, we keep trying to push teachers through this stress as though they can just get over it. They can't. They can't just get over it. They can't just keep teaching like it's not a whole fight about to happen in the corner. They can't just keep dealing with these things. So when you bring around this new initiative and you brought something around, and the last time you or the team, because sometimes it's not you, you got to remember you represent an aesthetic, you represent a symbol of somebody or something or some unit. And you, as an instructional leader, represent leadership. Even if you're brand new to the district, you represent that district's leadership. So for them, they remember the last initiative and it didn't work. They remember that they weren't supported. So now they're burnt out. They're tired. They're frustrated. And so now you got, it's a certain term. Now, I didn't make this term up. It's actually a real term. It's called institutional inertia. If you know how to spell that out, put that in the chat. Institutional inertia, right? So that way somebody else can look it up later. Institutional inertia keeps us, it's a type of resistance, and it keeps us stuck in our traditional ways of being because that's all we really got. We don't see hope in trying something new because the kids ain't gonna do this. It's all the negative deficit-based narratives that are in the teacher's heads that are helping them to believe that this new initiative that you're talking about rolling out is not going to work. It's not good enough to solve the problems. Hey, Ben, thank you. It's not good enough to solve the problems that we're having in the classroom. So when you have that type of resistance, what do? First, you got to get to the root. First, you got to get to the root. Somebody put root in the chat. I'm gonna do y'all like we preaching, okay? Put root in the chat. Tell your neighbor, say root. Root. So some of the roots, I got a few notes that I'm gonna be looking back and forth at. So if you see me looking out, that's what I'm looking at. But what we have is that number one, we don't understand, nor do we apply adult learning theory research into how we plan these rollouts. Rollouts meaning how are you rolling out this new instruction? It could be culturally responsive teaching where you're trying to get all the teachers on board to actually put this in practice. Because let me tell you, it doesn't need to be a little checklist. It needs to be the way we engage our young people, white, Black, Asian, Latina, everybody needs culturally responsive teaching. It's not just for the Black kids. Let me make sure we understand that. Okay. So we're not understanding, nor are we applying adult learning theory. So let me give y'all a bit of research because I know I got a few scholars on the line. The Journal of Educational Change in 2019 says that there is more buy-in from teachers with rollouts when leaders are clear on the purpose. Is more buy-in when they're clear, when you, the leader, is clear on the purpose of why am I even putting this new initiative out. If you don't know why, if you can't tell teachers why this is going to change what they're doing already or how it's going to enhance or make better or bring students into their own genius or help mitigate some of the stress of these off-task behaviors, because let's be real, a lot of the time our young people are cutting up, they're acting a fool, they're doing the most, and sometimes it's because our instruction hasn't captivated their interest. You haven't tapped into their curiosity. They didn't have a choice about anything. You said open the textbook and you wanted them to be excited about a textbook that you're not even excited about. I'm just saying. So we gotta think about we gotta exactly, Alexia. That's what we're saying. We've got to think about if it's important for teachers to understand the why so they can buy into these initiatives that you're rolling out. It's also got to be the same with our students, right? It's the same effect because this is what it's got to be about. How am I tapping into the capacity of the learner? Teachers with new initiatives are now learners. And what are learners? In the brain, I was talking about this a few minutes ago. You got to be able in the brain to feel safe enough to take intellectual risk. That's happening in the limbic region of the brain, and that amygdala, right? That small part. I was doing a PD before the break, before the holiday break or the winter break, and I had them looking at a diagram of the brain, and we looked at the reptilian, the limbic, and the neocortex. And the reptilian is the brain stem, the cerebellum. It's all the way in the back, and it's the oldest part of the brain, or the first parts of the brain that were formed. But over time, our brains evolved, and so we got closer to the front. But in that middle, what was so impactful in the middle is that amygdala literally looked this small. And it literally is this small. I think they say it's like the size of an acorn, but it's power packed, baby. It's powerful. Guess what? That amygdala can stop you in your tracks from trying out anything new. And this is not only true for students, but it's definitely true for teachers. Okay. So there's a lot of things in play about creating this psychological safety and getting to the root. But another piece of research talks about in the Learning Policy Institute of 2018, they put out a report. And it said when PD programs emphasize rationale and purpose, there is higher teacher morale, which guess what? Guess what? It naturally leads to increased student achievement outcomes, meaning the babies are doing better. The babies are working, they're learning, they're producing, they're thinking, they're imagining, they're doing the things of the neocortex region, which is right here in the front, right? So that's where we're trying to get them. We're trying to get them out of the fear zone, which is more so in the middle, into the creativity zone. But that only happens when we've got teachers who are fully brought in to the initiatives that you're rolling out. So now you're overwhelmed, but baby, it's time to own it. Somebody put own it. I told you I'm gonna preach to y'all today. Somebody put own it in the comments. Own it. It is time for you to stop being overwhelmed with the new initiative. You got the people from the district coming to watch you or watch the teachers. Now you stressed about that. They want paperwork, they want data, they want all this, and you're frazzled because it's not coming off as it should come off. But it's time to go from overwhelmed. Somebody put own it in the chat. Own it is where we want to be. But here's the parts of adult learning theory. And then I've got a special guest I'm going to bring in who's already here, the amazing Ben Brun. He's going to come in and help us talk a little bit about the root work that we talked about earlier. But you got to think about this, 2 tenets, because I think it's about 5 principles. No, it's 7 principles of adult learning theory, but I'm only going to talk about 2. Self-concept is 1, meaning that adults want to feel like you understand that they are capable of making decisions, not being voluntold, right? We know leadership, sometimes we're good for that because we're like, we got a job to do. We got to get it done. But education and teaching is not just another job to do. Yes, it should be respected as a profession. Yes, you should be respected as a teacher who is coming in and doing a job to get paid well. We're not discounting any of those things. But this is a spiritual calling when we're talking about educating the mind of our young people. But in order to educate the mind and the soul of our young people, we've got to be tapped into how are we making space for the adults to be shown that they are capable of making decisions, right? Because if they're always being voluntold, there is less investment, which means less accountability. The next one is experience. A lot of them have so many experiences. There's one exercise I do sometimes in a PD where I have, if we're doing stuff like team building and getting to build the trust and the emotional resilience to carry out some really heavy work like culturally responsive teaching. One of the exercises I do is I divide people into groups or teams, and they have to go back and say how long they've taught in education, what are their degrees, what kind of experiences do they have, what school, not what schools, but what grades, like what's the grade spans that they've taught or the different positions. And you get to visually see the power in the room, right? Because just because somebody is an instructional coach now, they could have also been, I've been in PD before the break, another one where she was a principal and now she's back in the classroom. Like people's journeys change. It's not linear. Some people come back into the classroom for whatever different reasons. But to see visibly their experience is important because without tapping into their experience, now you've got educators and teachers who are so burnt out from all these new initiatives, right? And this is the root cause why some of them are burnt out. They're experiencing so much fatigue because they don't feel valued. They feel valueless. Valueless. There's no team to distribute power. So sometimes they are either, like I said before, voluntold. There's a lot of power hoarding over teachers, telling them what to do versus getting shoulder and elbow together to make decisions together. And then they're thinking, why am I here? What's the purpose of me being here? To get a check. And then we begin to see also some harmful behaviors because now teachers are burnt out, lost hope. They don't see the purpose of what they're doing, and you're bringing in a new initiative and they're not into it. So what we got to do is think about if they are being resistant. Here's your action step number one. Okay. So I'm going to give you two action steps and then we're going to bring Ben into the conversation. Two action steps. So one, I want you to think about this. Teachers are going to either decide to resist or go with the flow, right? But the question you need to ask yourself is if they are being resistant, what exactly are they resisting? If teachers are being resistant to this new curriculum, to this new program, to this new initiative that you planned so eloquently over the summer, right? And even if they started off well, it's lost its fire. If they're being resistant, what exactly are they being resistant to? Because sometimes they're not resistant against necessarily the program itself. It could be that they're resistant to some power structures of inequity, right? Where the different powers that be get to make all of the choices and decisions without tapping into the power of the students, the power of the teachers, the power of the families. And so it's this, we're up here and we're going to tell y'all down there what to do. Maybe it's misallocation of resources. I literally got that yesterday in conversation with a teacher. She's so frustrated with all these new initiatives that the district is bringing out because they're hiring new folks and giving them these big salaries, or they're putting money in certain certain parts of the district that are more affluent and more economically well off, so to speak. So maybe they're more frustrated with that. Or is it that they're being overworked and underpaid? So I want you to think about that action step number one. Find out what exactly are they resisting. Because if you don't get to the root, you're just going to keep slapping on more initiatives. And now you're shooting in the dark. Now you're shooting in the dark. You don't even know what your target is anymore. You don't even understand what you're doing and why you're doing it and how it connects to building teacher and student capacity. Let me say this. Any initiative that comes out should be dual purposed, maybe even more than dual purpose, but I'm going to say dual for now. It should be dual purpose. It should be about building the capacity of your students, but also your teachers. If your initiative that you're rolling out does not have in mind how we are going to build the capacity of the students and the teachers, now we have an initiative that it gives performative. It gives, we're checking off a checklist to say we gave them this, we tried this, and it didn't work, but we didn't get down to the root of why teachers are so burnt out and sick and tired of every new initiative every 2 to 4 years. We didn't get down to the root. So I want you to think about this with action step number two. Do you even know the target? And this is a layered action step number two. Do you even know what the target is? Think of a bullseye. And you got in the middle that target that you want to be able to hit to show, wow, I know how to do what I'm doing. Hey, Eva, I know how to do what I'm doing. But do I even know what the target is, or is it blurry? Are there multiple targets and it's not even clear? Because if it's not clear to you as a leader, baby, how it's going to be clear to the people? Who are the people? The teachers. They are the doers of the work. So I know some of us get into these different positions and we forget sometimes where we came from. Sometimes we forget how it felt to be told that you need to be doing this, and you don't even understand why you're doing this. You don't understand what success looks like in this. You don't understand how to get over the hump because I tried it and it didn't work for these kids or this class. I've had many a strategy that would work well before lunch, but baby, after lunch, oh, they weren't into that. Or vice versa. They had more energy after lunch. You try first thing during first period, and some of them halfway sleep. Because I'm working with middle schoolers, right? So I'm thinking about, I want you to think about, do you know the target? And now ask yourself, why did you even choose that target? Hey, Brooke, why? Sometimes we just put out these initiatives or we accept them from the district. And sometimes y'all got to get a little bold. Quit taking everything the district and these leaders and these people send y'all. Get some boldness about yourself. We're not doing this for ourselves. We're doing this for the baby. So if they're bringing you this new initiative, this is time to ask the question. Thankfully, I was blessed with a I don't care if I ruffle feathers kind of personality. I'm going to ask the questions. I'm not going to be disrespectful, but we got to figure out why. Why is this initiative being put into place? Who is it set to serve, or is it here to make the district look good? Is it here to show we're spending district dollars on good curriculum because somebody somewhere else told us it was good? Yes, there's always a new initiative. Then in a few more years, when this one didn't work, it's going to be another one, and teachers are going to come back yet again. Oh, here we go again. I'm telling you, this is something I said myself. This is something I experienced as a teacher, and then I experienced it as an instructional leader. And so I know the frustration from both ends. So I was the one at board district meetings asking the question. Sure did. Why are we doing this? Why do you need this compliance measure in place by this date? This is not going to give us thorough data because we're not giving enough time to feedback loops being in place, right? If we're trying something out, I've got to help first prepare my teachers around readiness and willingness, right? Who are they? What is their identity? And that's when I'm going to bring Ben in. Ben, if you know how to do the little request thing, can you do that? If not, I think I can. Yes, it gives whiplash, Eva. It gives whiplash. She said the worst part in the charter, because I'm on another platform as well, so I'm going to read your comment out. The worst part in the charter world, it feels like there's a new initiative every 2 to 3 months, not even 2 to 3 years. Oh, that's definitely giving whiplash. Definitely giving whiplash, because we got all these dollars that we want to spend to show we're doing the things. But sometimes it's about stroking ego more than about helping and serving the baby. So we got to ask the questions. If we know the target, why did we choose the target? And last part, is the target supported by my 2 things? For those who just came in, let me give you those 2 things again. Is the target being supported by giving us support around building their competence and their confidence? Their competence, their skill set, their confidence, their soul. And who am I talking about there? Teachers and students. Again, it's got to be dual. It's got to be a dual capacity type of framework, not to bite off of Dr. Karen Mapp with the dual capacity framework for engaging families, but same thing. So I'm going to bring Ben in because Ben is in an instructional leadership position, and he was also a member of our cohort. And so I want him to come in, and he's also got an amazing masterclass that's coming out same day as mine, but baby, go where y'all need to go. Okay, it's good work. So I want Ben to come in and have a conversation just for a few minutes about the importance of root work when we are pushing out these new initiatives, especially around equity. So Ben should be coming in. Y'all share the live if you're here. For those who are on LinkedIn and Facebook and YouTube, you'll hear Ben. Hey, Ben. I cannot hear you, Ben. It's like I can hear the ruffle, but I can't hear your voice.
Hi. Is that any different?
I got you.
You got me now?
Yeah. So introduce yourself to the people real quick, Ben. Tell them who you are, where you're from, what you do, all the things.
Yeah. I am a white male out in Oregon, teaching social studies, and been doing that about 10 years or so. I'd say that's the primary route label to be tapping into my soil. But like was shared, like as one of those teachers who have different routes, you kind of uncover. So like union rep, helping some equity stuff started out there. I was just kind of being explicit about the race factor for me because I just know like I've internalized a lot of stuff in my seed in that ecosystem that I have to divest from and own to disrupt the soil. Mm-hmm. And so I know that's a lot of work I've had to do inside out that Dr. Mel's helped out with in Scholars for the Soul, in just being able to detoxify that has to go inside out rather than a top-down chain.
And so how do you see that work, or maybe the lack thereof, right? So how do you see the importance of doing that work, especially when it comes to rolling out, whether it's a new curriculum or it's a new instructional strategy or way of being? How do you see the importance of like really doing the root work? So maybe you can start telling us a little bit about what root work means for you, and then how you see that come out when it's time to like roll out strategies and roll out programming.
Yeah, even like that image of root comes back to what you shared at the beginning of the live, Dr. Mel, just around recognizing my humanity, that like I have way more in common with a root as an organism than a machine. And so many initiatives are, let's upgrade my software, let's replace my parts, let's try to produce a different kind of can on the same motor mill, and try to, still make students and other products comply with some model from unknown people to produce something for profit and production. And so I'm complicit in that. Disrupting that can be really hard as a machine, but as a root, I can feel some hope in changing an ecosystem over time. So at least for me, just that image of root, just again, like that fear factor, like, oh, wow, like, am I looking in my classroom? Am I looking at the lunchroom with my colleagues and seeing a bunch of thread-like roots as an organism? Where am I reading the room on that fear factor? Or where is there joy in the soil? Where is there happiness? Where is some resilience? Who's been here a year? Who's been here 10 years? So when I think about that resistance, I love what you were sharing in terms of the why. Some people are resistant because they're just fragile. They've been transplanted into that soil and their roots are super touchy. They're just trying to get through the day. And that survival mentality might not be present for a veteran educator who is a root in that community, but they've had no voice and they're bitter about that power dynamic in the soil. So they're a root. That touchiness is a whole other thing to unpack than the touchiness of fresh roots. There's maybe an unrecognized root that maybe even students and staff tap into, but their leadership ignore or silence. And they have their own buildup and bark in that soil that they're not going anywhere. That leaders come in, come out, but they still, it's hard to cultivate within a soil that is depleted of nutrients. So I guess back to me and my positionality is part of the work is not just looking at the roots, but am I willing to dig into the soil and slow down?
What happened then?
And shallowness.
Okay. You kind of went out a little bit, but I heard you say about going down into the roots, into the soil. And I had a question in my mind. Where do you see uprooting weeds in relation to the root work? Is that something you see? And what could the weeds symbolize when we're talking about this kind of fatigue or this kind of bitterness that comes from being in a system for so long and having hope at one point? I believe most teachers have had that type of hope before, but to see that hope be deferred really breaks the spirit, right? And so, like, where do you see the weeds in relation to that?
Yeah, I mean, at first, I had to slow down enough to even know, do I recognize what a weed is?
Yeah.
So just me trying to own, like, am I conditioned to look at a weed as a weed when maybe I'm the weed? So just knowing, like, am I just conditioned to look for monochrome grass everywhere? And I see a dandelion and I just am conditioned to chop it down and judge it. When really, what can I learn from that dandelion? And no wonder it needs that deep taproot. But in a sea of conformity of whiteness defined as the norm, we've industrialized grass as good. And that dandelion is getting cut down. Yeah. So when someone asks grass, who's the weed? They're going to say dandelion. But the brilliance of a garden, they've wondered, grass, like, where'd you come from? Yeah. Are you invasive? Why are you here? So I'm not a botanist to unpack, who's weed, who's not. Yeah. But I can look at, is there thriving in this ecosystem or not? Am I supporting that, or am I taking away? Or back to Yolanda's quote from a year ago, hitting with me still, like, am I healing or am I hurting? Am I willing to, back to Bobby's, he's in here, I think, just around just recognizing, like, am I willing to own on his life he shared with Yolanda, like, I might not be the hero in my story. Yeah. I might be the villain. So I'm slowing down on that, before labeling the weed, because me recognizing, like, for me to recognize my seed is slowing down to just own what I need to own within the system. Rather than sometimes I can weaponizing traits of supremacy, weaponizing weeds when I don't even know me.
You've given me a lot, because what I'm thinking about is how you're talking about slowing down, and I connected it back to your analogy of it being a machine. And when I'm talking about a machine, the systems of being within education that keep us constantly moving for product and profit, as you said before, which is really deeply rooted in the capitalism that pervades every fiber of our being in this society. But I also think we don't ever have the time to slow down, right? Because, and I say we don't have the time, meaning there's not time allocated or space created for us to take the time to actually do that. So the honest for that is really tricky. I don't pretend to know the answers for everything, but I do know when we think about school leadership also versus district leadership, I think creating an opportunity for your voice to be magnified, right? So I think that takes a lot of learning of ourselves, of who we are and the value that we inertly have outside of our positionalities and outside of our privilege and outside of the titles around us, whether we're an instructional coach or a principal, and all the things that come into play with that. Who are we at our core, and what purpose do we have in this world to serve in these communities where grass and dandelions and sunflowers can thrive in an ecosystem where we're all getting air and water, right? And so, and I think sometimes we think about the needs of the garden. And so, because so many of us may be getting more air and water than others, then we are maybe thinking that they're not good enough innately, right? It's not that they're not getting enough air and water. You're just not good enough to survive here in this garden, rather than looking and seeing, okay, the air and water is being consumed mostly in my position, in my space. And so I'm thinking about a lot of things, and I want to kind of close out the conversation a little bit, but I want you to tell us a little bit about the master class that you are having on Saturday and how that kind of just connects to what we're talking about. Because I do want people to know about the work that you're doing, but I also want people to keep in mind that when we're talking about rolling out new initiatives, we have to be so intentional about our purpose so that our intention, like Dina Simmons says, meets the impact, right? Because if not, the thing we thought could heal actually began to hurt. And I think what happens a lot of times in that gap from healing to where it reaches hurt is that a lot of times we're not taking up or we're taking up too much space as leaders and not giving more space to the people that we're serving to get air and water so they can breathe, so they can live, so they can speak, so they can say the things they need to say about what they need to thrive. So those are kind of some of my thoughts, but I want you to kind of close the conversation out with just any lasting thoughts about rolling out initiatives and the purpose of root work, and then what you're doing Saturday.
Yeah. So just starting with Saturday, all that I'm really sharing is a practice that I've done for myself the last few years. Just slowing down, like Dr. Mel said, to identify who are roots in my life I want to tap into with more intentionality. And that could be an ally, at work that I know I want to have a stronger partnership with them. It may be someone that I have a good relationship with, but I want to, shift the direction. Maybe I'm connecting with them as a colleague, but I want to start introducing them to my kids.
Yeah.
And connecting outside of work. But part of that workshop is knowing who are you reaching out to, and I think more specifically how are we reaching out? Am I reaching out in a way that's purely transactional? or is it a space where I'm willing to sit and listen to understand instead of just trying to respond? I think part of that is in that soil work is trying to disrupt to liberate. How can I disrupt myself enough so I grow?
Yeah.
But knowing I don't need to do that on my own, that I can have that joy and that freedom be something that I share with other people.
Mm-hmm.
So just some of those small shifts, just practically, if you want to look at my last post and see a preview of kind of those 4 steps, the template I created is in my link tree if you want to grab that. But I think back to your question with initiatives, I know for leaders to just even take time to assess the ecosystem they're in.
Yeah.
What roots are already here? What kind of level of growth am I asking from this system?
Mm-hmm.
Where will the resources be needed most first? Where are there maybe even mother trees that others already tap into? Kind of what you brought up, Dr. Mel, around asking and listening and getting that responsiveness, but maybe even emotions being a way to categorize that soil sample with a survey. So getting a soil sample survey of, I get a general sense that there's resistance. Can you share more feelings of what, like unpacking that? So maybe some empathy interview questions as an example. That can be more of a conversation than the default of an email.
Yes.
It's like, hey, I'm going to try to drop by their room after school and just check in. And maybe you're not even listening. Maybe that modeling that vulnerability of sharing what you feel afraid of as a leader, or what you're excited about as a leader. I think just modeling that emotional piece that you have an amygdala too. And that you're part of that journey with them. And I think that helps it be a with conversation instead of just for or to.
I love that, Ben. That soil sample is one of the things we're going to talk about in the masterclass on Saturday, because being able to tap into the voices of the people that you're serving and working with is really, really important for us to get a well-rounded perspective of the work that we're doing. So I appreciate you, Ben. Thank you so much. I know you got to run, but thank you for being on with me, and we'll talk to you later, Ben.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And if you know how to hang it up, Ben, just hang it up. I don't know how to get you off.
All right, I think I exit out.
Okay, thanks so much. And I'm so happy that Ben came in, because one of the things that I really like to focus on when I'm doing work with schools and I'm doing work with leadership, and I'm really happy to do the work with instructional leaders primarily, is that we've got to get around our purpose and intentionality as leaders. And so this is action step number 3. If you've been following along, you know now we're at action step number 3 for this challenge, because this is not just a conversation. I am giving you some things I need you to take away with you. If you're not an instructional leader or a teacher leader or department leader or whatever leader position, pass these words or these challenges on to your staff members just as modes of thinking. But I want you to think about the be, do, have principle. And I had my business coach give this to me a while ago, and I think it also came from Myron Golden, who's another business coach. But think about the be. So in order for this work, and when I'm talking about this work, I'm talking about culturally responsive teaching, leadership, social emotional learning, restorative practices, work that is rooted, hey Crystal, work that is rooted in equity, meaning providing fairness and justice and healing for our young people, but starting with the adults who serve them, right? Think about the be, do, have principle. So in order for this work to work with your initiative that you're putting out, first of all, you got to be asking yourself, what mindset, what space of being do I as the leader need to be in, and the teachers or the doers need to be in? Whoever's carrying out this work, what is the being space that you need to have to facilitate the journey? Because this is something new, right? This is a learning challenge. This is something that they're going to bring in, or you're going to bring in for them to carry out. But if you're thinking about it in any line of equity, I'm going to tell you, Ben talked about it. You got to be willing to disrupt. And that is revolutionary. And I looked up the word revolutionary. It means a dramatic change. It's dramatic. So, yes, it is going to unearth some emotions in folks that they may not be ready to actually take on. Does that mean we don't do the work because they're not ready? No, our babies need the work. But now we've got to think about in my instructional initiatives, so I don't get this frustration and this burnout, how am I building readiness and willingness? But it's got to start with the leadership team. And that's why I was so grateful at the start of the school year to have a leadership team and a teacher team to go through the leading with soul cohort and the teaching from the soul cohort. Because now it's not just on the teachers to carry out the work. Leadership has to be shaped, developed, unpacked, unlearned, uproot. Think of what needs to be done for you to embody the work, to model the work, and to share the work. That is my own company's framework. Embody, model, and share. So, what type of being? Number two, the do. What kind of root work, like being talked about, what things have to be unearthed? Y'all got to think about this. When we talk about getting to the core of our identity or identities as teachers, there's a lot of unpacking to that, right? To figure out why you do what you do and what calling it has to your spirit. It's a lot of unpacking because the world, whether it started in childhood, in your relationships, in the many jobs you had, in the community experiences, the political experiences, the oppressive experiences, those are all layers. And Dr. Yolanda Seeley Ruiz talks about self-excavation because it's about getting back to the core. And if you don't know who you are at the core, it's very hard for you to be purposeful in this kind of work. And that's why your initiatives keep falling, because you have to be willing, able, and ready to do that root work. Then you can have, right? We said the be, we said the do. Now you can have the things you've dreamed about. Now you can have teachers and PLCs actually collaborating. Now you can have students who are excited to learn. Will they come in every day excited? No, they're humans, right? We're not expecting perfect people to come into the building every day super duper excited so that strokes our ego to make us feel like we're doing something right. No, we're dealing with humans who have outside experiences as well as inside the school experiences. But we're creating a space where even if they come into this space in another attitude that is down, that is maybe depressed, that is maybe not feeling it today, the love and energy and the space of curiosity, the space of courage to take risks that are involved in learning, it's there, right? And that love shifts. Love is so powerful that it changes the entire environment, okay? So think about the be. What do you have to be? You as the leader, them as the teachers. What do you have to do? What kind of root work being talked about? What has been rooted? What kind of things are the norm here, and who are they serving? Who are they healing, or who are they hurting? Right? And then have, because now what do you want to have? What will you have as a result of this? So we are going to close this thing out. I've got more notes, y'all, but I can't go much longer. I've got to get off. I've got to go to church, to Bible study. So I am not going to be on long, but we're going to pick up where we left off, because during this masterclass, we're going to be talking deeper, not just about these things, but going into the practical steps of what does it look like to unearth? What does it look like to actually unpack? What does the be do have look like as for me as an instructional coach, or as a department leader, or as a teacher leader, right? I'm glad it feels like church, Brooke, because that's spiritual for me. And this work is very spiritual for me, right? So I need you all to remember those 3 action steps. Let me say them again real quick. Action step number 1. Where did the first one go, y'all? I don't know, but we'll start with this one. All right. Oh, here it is. So action step number 1, if teachers are being resistant, ask yourself, what exactly are they resisting? Don't take it personal. What systems are they resisting? Have those conversations like being walked us through. Have a survey out there. Figure it out. Action step 2, what is your target? Do you even know what you're doing with this initiative? Sorry, I hope y'all can still hear me. Let me know if you can't. But what are you doing with this initiative? Why did you choose this initiative? Why did you choose this target? right? Is the target being supported through the building of competence and confidence? Competence and confidence, right? That's action step number 2. Action step number 3, the be, do, have. Who do you have to be as a leader? Who do your teachers need to be as teachers to carry this thing out with success, right? With success. What do you have to do to get to that place of that being, right? What has to be uprooted? What needs to be unpacked? What needs to be unlearned, right? Thank you. Thank you, Brooke. And then what do you want to have as a result of this? What are the dreams? I put this in a reel the other day. I need y'all to get back to dreaming. Quit letting these circumstances rob you of your dreams. Quit letting these people who are in power and abusing the power rob you of your dreams. Your dream is a spiritual gift. It's deeply rooted in the core of your soul. Don't let these people come in and uproot your dream from because of their foolishness. Right? So those are your 3 action steps. When you come in tomorrow, I want you to remember that we are going in for day 2. Why your rollout plans are causing more confusion than clarity. Because baby, it's giving confusion. I know you planned it well. I know you did all the things. You had the infographic and you had the anchor charts and you thought you did all the things. And maybe you thought you did well and maybe you did. You worked hard, but it didn't get what it was supposed to. It wasn't giving what it was supposed to give. Right? So we got to figure out why your rollout plans cause more confusion than clarity. But don't forget, I need you all. And tomorrow I'm going to figure out if it's a way I can put this link up here so y'all can just click it from here. But otherwise, I need you to, when we get off here, you can do it now. Go to the link in my bio and you will see join masterclass, join the challenge plus masterclass link. I need you to click that link because it gives you free access to our masterclass that's going on this Saturday at 10:30 a.m. You get a 72-hour free replay. You get a community of people like being like others and people. I am really, really so very grateful. Every time I look at my email, somebody else is signing up for this masterclass. Somebody else is signing up for this masterclass. So it's going to be lit. I'm absolutely super excited and grateful for the people that are taking out their Saturday. Thank you, Brooke. Their Saturday to come in and engage with me. Because what we're going to do is get some practical steps. You got a roll out roadmap. A roll out, it's okay, Brooke. A roll out roadmap, right? And that rollout roadmap is the launch pad you need to make sure that your leadership and teacher teams are successful when you start planning your rollout. It's not too late. Maybe you need to go back to the drawing board and try again, right? Don't be ashamed. Get your ego out the way. I don't care what the district is saying. If they're pushing you, you don't have nothing to give right now. You tried and it didn't work. So now you got to be real with yourself, be real with your supervisors or whomever else is on your back with all these compliance measures and let them know, hey, we're going back to the drawing board. And it starts this Saturday. So sign up. You'll get reminders. You'll get the replays of this challenge as well. And we will be back here tomorrow at 5:00 p.m. Central Standard Time. Thank y'all for joining me and share this with somebody else so other folks can come in tomorrow. Bye, you all. Bye.